the surface of what can be talked about. I mean, we do have a limitation of an hour, but I do hope that what we were able to talk about in relation to burnout, what causes it, how to address it, how to engage in effective time management and communication was helpful for you today. But at this point, of course, I'm very open to questions if any of you might have any. So yeah, feel free to unmute or, just message the chat box if you have any questions.
Okay, I think we have some questions that were sent in prior, so I can read one of them. So one question that was sent in prior, how to gain focus and improve decision making.
Okay. Well, this is, I guess, a very general question, but the time blocking method, I would say, allows you, as I said, instead of having to shift from like one mode of thought to another, it allows an individual to engage in deep work. And when a person is in that state of deep work, it first of all becomes easier to focus, and secondly, makes it easier to engage in clear decision making. However, that is for a neurotypical population. For people that may be neurodivergent, sometimes the time blocking method might not work. And so what can be helpful here is doing small, for people that may be neurodivergent, doing small adjacent tasks that may lead to a sense of accomplishment can be very helpful also in gaining the momentum to be able to focus on a bigger task. On top of that, if we're talking about decision making and being able to make clear decisions, one very important thing here I would say is always try to make an informed decision. And being able to make an informed decision involves trying to gather as much knowledge or information that you can about this decision that you might have to make, and giving yourself the time and space to actually, one, gather that information, two, sit down and process all of this information, and three, arrive at a decision that is informed. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Sorry, it's kind of broad, but I hope these were some things that, at least whoever asked the question can take away with them for now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there's 3 more here we have. Next one is, can you recommend some best practices for effective communication with the team as well as time and stress management?
Okay. For effective communication, wait lang. Honestly, I would say that this acronym is probably the best way to do so. And the reason that I say this is because it allows, one, an assessment of what is factually happening by describing the situation objectively and showing how that situation affects me in terms of emotions, mental, tiredness, whatever. But if you notice, by describing the situation objectively, what's done here is not placing blame on another person. And that's when communication becomes ineffective, is when people start to point fingers. I mean, it may be true that sometimes maybe the way that someone behaved or a mistake that might have been done has led to certain consequences. But then at the point where we're trying to communicate effectively, it makes sense to try to stick to the facts for that point in time and, show or talk about how that makes each individual member feel, so that as a group, there could be this consensus on what can be done to address that issue. So yeah.
It's great. Thank you for that. Okay, so we have 2 more. If anyone has questions in chat, feel free, okay? Okay, so the next one, for workaholics, when problems in your personal life start to get worse, how do you know when to take a step back from work?
Okay. I think in general, even before problems start to come up, it's advisable to take a step back from work if you do identify as a workaholic. Because, I mean, going back to the idea of balance, is, the truth is, if we do find ourselves engaging in work on an extreme level, then what can end up happening is the time that you may be able to put into addressing your personal needs is taken away and placed into work. The energy is taken away too. And we've noticed that if we do put too much effort and energy into our occupation, it can lead to physical tiredness, mental tiredness, exhaustion, fatigue, all of these different signs of burnout. And so in an ideal situation, I would actually say that it would be best to not wait until it starts to affect your personal life and try to incorporate that sense of balance to the day-to-day. However, if it is already starting to affect your personal life, in my opinion, that should be a sign already that it's time to take a step back. And honestly, the truth is, sometimes it's very difficult to do so. Okay, because the thought pattern associated here sometimes with workaholics is that my self-worth is attached to the level of productivity that I can give at work. And that is a very, I guess, like neoliberal way of thinking. But the truth is, it may help to actually try to put that self-worth. Let's not put all of our self-worth eggs in one basket. For many workaholics, self-worth is in the basket of work. But it might be helpful, a practical kind of approach here would be to place that self-worth in, your relationship with friends and your hobbies too, your families, your family, things that you enjoy doing. And in being able to do that, you may be able to detach the need to always perform at work. If that is difficult, which honestly it is, I would personally suggest, maybe seeing a professional that could help process this with you and unravel some of the thought patterns that leads to this tendency to always have to work. So yeah, I hope that answered that question.
Okay, thank you. I think we have one last. So the last one is how to focus on completing tasks in a logical step.
Okay. So again, going back to time blocking, I think is I sent the link. I think that is a very practical way of doing so. Another practical thing is maybe, sometimes tasks seem impossible, right? It's like you keep on working towards it and you're like, oh shit, I can't actually do this because it's so insurmountable. So what can be helpful in this context is breaking it into subtasks and then putting those subtasks into these different blocks of time that you might have created. To add on to that though, again, that works a lot for like a neurotypical population. Again, for those that may be neurodivergent, I do believe that it is helpful to try to gain momentum. And so sometimes what can be helpful is try to gain a sense of accomplishment elsewhere. If your big task is to create a proposal and you can't seem to get started, what can help is, maybe I'll clean the dishes first. Okay. Oh, now I feel accomplished. I can now do this. Or if you want an even more adjacent task, it would be maybe I'll try to answer my emails first and then use that momentum to be able to get working onto this task. And again, I guess it is important to realize that this task doesn't have to be done in, one fell swoop, but instead can be further subdivided into subtasks. So I would say using subdividing it into more, doable tasks, putting it into the time blocks that we talked about here. But again, for a neurodivergent population, sometimes what can be helpful is trying to gain momentum elsewhere and then carrying that momentum into the task that you do have to do right then and there. So yeah, I guess those are some potential ways of doing this.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all of our questions so far. Madame Joy, is there anything else you would like to add, or any other questions in chat?
I'm gonna say that I am super impressed with this. JR, I have to say that I am resonating a lot on the topics that you've actually shared today. And as much as I wanted to elongate this session, I know that some of these people will have to go to sleep or go back to work. But I would say that I would love to actually do this session with you again, which I am something that we can actually discuss, Diego. So everybody, before I say goodbye to JR, please feel free to actually send in your questions, but I'll give the last few minutes for you, JR, if you have some other like ending takeaways that you want to share.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joy. So, I mean, of course, what we talked about now is really just, I guess, the tip of the iceberg here. And as much as we were able to talk about some practical steps that we could take, which again can be very helpful. The truth is, if you are also experiencing this and you might feel that, you've taken these steps and they don't seem to be helping, or you're taking these steps and you find it difficult to actually engage in them, it does help to see a professional. That could be a psychologist. I mean, we at Gray Matters do actually have sessions that people could avail of. But yeah, so I would say that these are, I guess, foundational things that can be used and maybe implemented on the day-to-day. But if it is difficult to try to get started, of course, there's no shame in trying to get help also from somebody else. That could be in the form of a professional, but that could also come in the form of, reaching out to the social net, that supportive, safe space that you might have already. So yeah, I guess that's everything for now.
All right. So thank you very much, JR. Thanks.
Yeah,
man.
no worries,
I
Jen.
we really appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you
everyone
for
else
having
here
me.
as well. Yes.
Thank you for working outside of your work hours.
Yeah,
to
no
accommodate
worries.
for us.
No worries.
I appreciate you. Well, guys, later on, Alpha will be sharing a link to our feedback form, and we're hoping that if you wanted this type of session to repeat, please feel free to actually send in those requests so we keep on having JR here talking to us about these topics, because it's really important. Even I am actually learning a lot of things during these sessions. So guys, good night. And for those people who are still working, yes, give. I just want to give. That's all. Well, for all those people who are actually continue working, have a day. And for those who are here in the Philippines, please rest, get some water, go to the restroom, and good night. Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, awesome work. They are. Thanks, Jags, for
Thanks,
introducing us
everyone.
to him.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Bye, guys. Thank
Bye.
you.
Take care. See you. Thanks.